It is 9:43 on a Wednesday night. Hafiz is sitting on the floor of his 4-room HDB in Bukit Panjang. Not on the sofa, on the floor, back against the wall, laptop open, coffee going cold. He and his wife Nurul bought this flat as a BTO in 2017 when they were 28 years old. They paid $420,000. It is worth $700,000 now. That number used to make Hafiz feel wealthy. Tonight, it does not. He wants to upgrade to a condominium. The flat has crossed its minimum occupation period. They had been waiting for this moment for 7 years. They are ready. Or they thought they were. What Hafiz is discovering tonight, on the floor at 9:43, is that the rules of Singapore property did not stay still while he was busy paying his mortgage and raising 2 children. They changed, multiple times, in layers, in ways that most people discover only when a decision is already in motion and reversing it costs money. 5 separate layers of rules now govern what he can buy, what it costs, how long he must hold it, and what he actually walks away with when he sells. Most Singaporeans understand 1 or 2 of them. Almost nobody understands all 5 simultaneously. That is exactly why we are here. Layer 1. The most expensive number in Singapore property that nobody talks about at the coffee shop. Additional buyer's stamp duty. As of 2026, these are the rates, unchanged since April 2023, confirmed through Budget 2026 by IRAS. Singapore citizen buying a first residential property, 0 ABSD. Singapore citizen buying a second property, 20%. Singapore citizen buying a third or more, 30%. Permanent resident buying a first property, 5%. Permanent resident buying a second property, 30%. Permanent resident buying a third or more, 35%. Foreigner buying any residential property, first or 15th, 60% flat. Entity, company, trust, fund, 65%. Now stop and look at what 20% means on a real number. Hafiz and Nurul are Singapore citizens. They own 1 flat. If they sell the HDB flat before buying the condo, or simultaneously time it so that the flat legally changes hands before they exercise the option to purchase, their ABSD on the new condominium is 0. If they own both properties simultaneously for even 1 day longer than the rules allow, the ABSD on the condo is 20% of the purchase price. On a $1.5 million condominium, that is $300,000, not a fine, not a penalty they can negotiate away, a tax owed to IRAS within 14 days of signing the option to purchase, in cash or CPF, whichever is available. $300,000 because the sequence was wrong. There is a remission pathway. They can pay the $300,000 upfront and claim it back, but only if they sell the HDB flat within 15 months of the new condo purchase and neither of them owns any other residential property at the time of the refund claim. The remission was built for upgraders who need a timing bridge. It is functional, but it requires $300,000 to exist as accessible cash at the point of purchase. Most HDB upgraders do not have that sitting unused. The correct sequence is sell first, then buy, or time the HDB completion and the condo option exercise to happen in the right order. The timing window is not forgiving, and mistakes here are not 5-figure mistakes. Now look at the same decision for a permanent resident family upgrading from their first condo to a second property. Their ABSD is 30%. On a $1.5 million purchase, $450,000 in ABSD alone, before BSD, before legal fees, before renovation. This is not a peripheral cost that fits inside a rounding error. It is the single largest line item in the transaction. Now look at David, British fund manager, employment pass, Singapore for 9 years. He wants to buy a District 9 condominium at $3 million. His ABSD at 60% is $1,800,000. On top of the purchase price, on top of buyer stamp duty of approximately $119,600. His total acquisition cost before a single piece of furniture is $4,919,600. For a $3 million property, that is not a rounding error. That is what Singapore deliberately built after April 2023, when foreign buyer rates were doubled from 30% to 60%. Foreign purchases dropped sharply. The mid-market and entry-level private condominium is now structurally inaccessible to most non-resident buyers at those entry costs. The ultra-premium segment still sees foreign capital because at that level the absolute numbers absorb differently, but for everything below 5 million, 60% ABSD effectively closes the door. One exception almost no foreigner in Singapore knows exists. Americans buying a first residential property in Singapore pay 0 ABSD. Not 60%, 0. This is the consequence of the US-Singapore Free Trade Agreement, which grants American nationals the same stamp duty treatment as Singapore citizens. The same treatment applies to nationals of Iceland, Liechtenstein, Norway, and Switzerland under the EFTA agreement. A qualifying American buyer at $3 million saves $1,800,000 in ABSD versus a British buyer at the same purchase. That gap is not administrative. It is the difference between a viable and non-viable purchase decision. What Hafiz needs to do before he looks at a single floor plan: go to iras.gov.sg, use the stamp duty calculator, and model his specific sequence, not the general case, his case. With his HDB sale completing when, and his condo option exercised when. That specific timing is the difference between 0 ABSD and 300,000. Layer 2. The rule that changed overnight in July 2025 and repriced every short to medium investment in Singapore private property. Seller's stamp duty. Before 4th July 2025, the regime was this: sell a private residential property within 1 year of buying, 12%. Within 2 years, 8%. Within 3 years, 4%. After 3 years, 0. On 3rd July 2025, MAS, MOF, and MND announced jointly that effective the following morning, no transition period, no grace. The rules changed for all private residential properties purchased from that date onwards. New schedule. Sell within year 1, 16%. Within year 2, 12%. Within year 3, 8%. Within year 4, 4%. After 4 full years, 0. The holding period extended from 3 years to 4. The rate at every tier increased by 4 percentage points. The government returned to the pre-2017 framework that it had relaxed 8 years earlier. Why did this happen? In 2024, subsale transactions, buyers selling uncompleted units before construction finished, before they ever received the key, reached 6.6% of all non-landed private property sales. That is, buyers entering developer launches not to live in the unit, not even to rent it, but to sell it during the construction period for a capital gain. The government looked at that figure and decided it was speculative excess. No grace period. If you received an option to purchase before 4th July 2025, but exercised it on or after that date, the new schedule applied. The exercise date determines which regime governs, not the grant date, the exercise date. Rajan is 36 years old, senior engineer at the Jurong petrochemical firm. He bought a new launch condominium in Tampines in September 2025 at $1.8 million. He modeled a 3-year exit: sell at month 30, collect the gain, reinvest. Clean plan. He ran it in June 2025 when the old rules still applied. He exercised the option on 15th September 2025, 11 weeks after the rules changed. If he sells at month 30, 2.5 years in, at $2 million, the SSD under the new regime is 8% of $2 million. That is $160,000 going to IRAS before any agent commission, legal fees, or financing cost. The gain on paper is $200,000. After SSD, it is $40,000. Before all other costs, it is effectively zero or negative. The math on a 3-year exit no longer works for most properties at most price points purchased after July 2025. The minimum rational holding target for a clean exit is 4 full years from the date of purchase. Any investor who modeled their return on a 3-year exit horizon and bought after that date needs to rebuild their projection from the date the rules changed. The SSD does not apply to HDB flats. Those have the minimum occupation period, which is a separate anti-flip mechanism. But for every private condominium and every executive condominium after its MOP, if bought after 4th July 2025, you hold for 4 years minimum, or you pay. Go to iras.gov.sg, find your option to purchase acceptance date, and check which SSD schedule governs your specific purchase. If it is before 4th July 2025, the 3-year schedule applies. If it is after, the 4-year schedule applies. That date is the single most important number in your exit plan. Layer 3. The biggest overhaul of the executive condominium scheme since 2013. Announced 8th May 2026. For 3 decades, the EC worked like this: buy with subsidy at a price below comparable private condominiums. Live in it for 5 years, the minimum occupation period, then sell on the open market to Singapore citizens and PRs at whatever the market would bear. Collect the upside, use it to upgrade, repeat. That model produced outcomes like this. An EC buyer who received keys in 2021 could sell by 2026, 5 years later, at prices that had appreciated 20 to 40% from launch. The EC was the most efficient legal vehicle for HDB income ceiling adjacent Singaporean families to convert a subsidized entry into private market capital gains. The government looked at who was actually buying ECs and what happened at MOP. The proportion of first-timer buyers at EC launches, the families the scheme was designed for, fell from roughly 50% in 2020 to between 30 and 40% by 2024 and 2025. The 5-year flip playbook was being run by second-timers and investors who had figured out the subsidy to capital gain conversion route. On 8th of May 2026, Minister Chee Hong Tat announced 4 changes, all applying to EC GLS sites with tender closing dates from that date onwards. First, the minimum occupation period doubles from 5 years to 10 years. During that 10 years, EC owners cannot sell on the open market, cannot rent out the entire unit, and cannot purchase another residential property. Second, full privatization, when foreigners and entities can buy, moves from 10 years after TOP to 15 years after TOP. Third, the first-timer allocation at new EC launches rises from 70% to 90% of units during the first month. The priority period for first-timers extends from 1 month to 2 full years before second-timers and other buyers get access. Fourth, the Deferred Payment Scheme is removed. All new EC buyers use the normal payment scheme only. Progressive payments during construction, exactly as with private condominiums. No more paying the bulk on completion. These 4 changes do not affect the 5 EC projects already in the pipeline. The sites at Senja Close, Woodlands Drive 17, Sembawang Road, and Miltonia Close, and sites awarded before May 2026. Those projects retain the 5-year MOP and 10-year privatization. What the new regime means in real numbers. Wei Lin is 34 years old. She and her husband Jason earn a combined $11,000 a month, above the HDB BTO income ceiling of $14,000, but comfortably eligible for an EC. They are eyeing a new EC launch in Canberra Drive under the new rules, launching late 2026. They plan to ballot and buy. Under the old rules, they could sell to a Singaporean or PR buyer in 5 years, by approximately 2032. Under the new rules, they cannot sell until approximately 2037. They cannot rent out the full unit during that decade. They cannot buy another residential property while the MOP runs. And they pay progressively during construction, no DPS buffer. Wei and Jason need to ask a different set of questions before they sign. Not, what can we sell it for at 5 years? But, is this where we want to live for 10 years? Not, what does the investment return look like? But, can we service this loan on one income if one of us stops working? The income ceiling for ECs remains $16,000 in 2026, unchanged. For first-timer families who genuinely want to live in a condominium standard home for a decade, full facilities, swimming pool, gym, landscape grounds, the value proposition is still real. ECs are priced 15 to 25% below comparable private condominiums at launch. That discount is genuine. If you plan to live there for 10 years, the new rules do not hurt you. They eliminate the EC as a 5-year investment vehicle. That is precisely what they were designed to do. Layer 4. A rule change that most people have not noticed because the consequences will not arrive until 2034 at the earliest. From October 2024, HDB replaced the old mature versus non-mature estate classification with a 3-tier framework: Standard, Plus, and Prime. Standard flats carry the familiar 5-year MOP, standard resale conditions, and no subsidy recovery on sale. The majority of BTO supply is standard. Plus flats are in more desirable locations, near MRT stations, town centres, city fringe. They carry a 10-year MOP. Plus flat owners cannot rent out the entire unit, even after MOP clears. When they sell, HDB recovers between 6 and 8% of the resale price, not a fixed dollar amount, a percentage of whatever the flat actually sells for. Only Singapore citizens and permanent residents can buy plus flats on the resale market. Prime flats are in the most desirable locations, Central Region, what was previously the PLH scheme. 10-year MOP. Cannot rent out in full after MOP. 9% subsidy recovery on resale. Can only be sold to Singapore citizens in the resale market. These rules apply only to flats launched from October 2024 onwards. Existing flats are not affected. The first Plus and Prime flats will not be eligible for resale until 2034 at the earliest. Now look at what this costs Amira. Amira is 29 years old. She balloted for a Plus flat in Queenstown in the November 2024 BTO exercise. She got it. Purchase price, with subsidies, $580,000. Comparable resale flats in Queenstown today, $950,000 to $1,100,000. She is looking at that gap, $370,000 to $520,000 below resale, and calling it a deal. It might be, but the calculation she needs to run is this. She cannot sell until 2035 at the earliest, 10 years from key collection, assuming keys around 2025. When she sells, if the flat fetches $1 million, which is realistic for a Queenstown flat in 2035, she pays back between $60,000 and $80,000 to HDB as subsidy recovery. She also cannot have rented out the entire unit during that decade. If her life plan requires flexibility before 2035, a job change requiring relocation, a family situation that needs a different flat size, an upgrade to private property, the Plus classification makes every one of those pivots structurally harder and more expensive than a standard flat would. Plus flats are excellent value for buyers who genuinely plan to live in them for a decade or more, and whose life circumstances are stable enough to sustain that. They are a potential trap for buyers who did not understand that the upgrade playbook, BTO, 5 years, sell, upgrade, does not apply to them. The action here is this. Before you ballot for any BTO flat from October 2024 onwards, check the classification on HDB's sales launch page. Not the estate, not the estate type, the specific project classification, standard, plus, or prime. Then model what the 10-year MOP means for your life plan, not the 5-year MOP you have been assuming since the first time you heard about CPF grants. Bank loan requires 25% down payment, $375,000 total. 5% must be cash, $75,000. The rest can come from CPFOA. BSD on $1.5 million, approximately $44,600 in cash within 14 days of exercising the OTP. Legal fees for purchase, roughly $4,000 to $5,000. Total cash required, approximately $125,000. Hafiz has $292,000 in cash. He has $330,000 in CPFOA for the balance of the down payment. It works, with buffer. But only if the sequence is right. HDB sold before or simultaneously with the condo purchase so that ABSD is 0. One error in that sequence and $300,000 of that buffer disappears in a single tax bill. And this is before modeling TDSR. The condominium mortgage on $1.5 million at 25 years and 3% interest is approximately $7,100 per month. Under TDSR, total monthly debt obligations, mortgage plus car loan plus any other liabilities cannot exceed 55% of gross monthly household income. To service that mortgage comfortably under TDSR with no other debts, the household needs approximately $12,900 in monthly income. If Hafiz and Nurul have a car loan or any other outstanding credit, the income requirement is higher. This is the real budget of a Singapore property upgrade, not the headline price. The headline price plus the stamp duties plus the CPF refund mechanics plus the TDSR calculation plus the SSD horizon on the new purchase plus the sequence timing for ABSD. Every single one of those numbers is publicly available. Every single one of them is different from what most buyers assume before they model it. The action for anyone approaching an HDB upgrade. Log in to cpf.gov.sg and use the CPF Housing Dashboard to see exactly how much CPF you have used and what the current accrued interest is. Get the number today, not the day you sign the OTP. Then run the full sale proceeds calculation before you set your property budget. The CPF refund is not your money in a way you can spend freely. It is your money in a way you can deploy for housing or retirement, but not for the renovation or the car or the school fees. Now look at the whole landscape. In June 2026, 188 HDB resale flats sold for more than $1 million in a single month. The highest that month? $1.65 million for a 5-room flat in Queenstown. The all-time HDB record set April 2026 at $1.728 million for a 5-room flat on Henderson Road in Bukit Merah. 92 years remaining lease. District 4, high floor with views toward the greater southern waterfront. $1 million HDB flat. In April 2026, in a single quarter, 412 HDB resale transactions crossed $1 million, the highest quarterly figure ever recorded, representing a 74% increase on the 412 above 1 million in Q1 2025. $1 million HDB transactions spread across 18 of Singapore's 26 towns in Q1 2026, not just Queenstown and Toa Payoh. Tampines, Bishan, Bedok, Ang Mo Kio. Places where the median flat is not above $1 million, but the premium units are getting there. At the same time, the HDB Resale Price Index fell 0.1% in Q1 2026, the first quarterly decline in 7 years. 22 consecutive quarters of uninterrupted growth ended. Both of these facts are true simultaneously. The median resale price in June 2026 was $625,000. The $1 million story and the cooling story describe different segments of the same market. For private property, URA's Q1 2026 data shows the overall price index rose 0.9% for the quarter. Outside Central Region led at 1.3%. Core Central Region grew 0.4%. And URA flagged approximately 55,800 private residential units expected to complete in the coming years, the largest supply pipeline in over a decade, with the GLS confirmed list for the first half of 2026 running 50% above the decade average. Supply is coming. Demand cooling is already here. The margin for error on sequence, on timing, on misreading a single rule is narrower than it has been in a decade. 6 months after that Wednesday night on the floor, Hafiz sold the flat. He and Nurul completed on a 3-bedroom condominium in Bishan at $1.48 million. They sold the HDB flat first. They received $287,000 in cash and $326,000 back into their CPFO. The ABSD on the condominium was 0. The BSD was $43,600, paid in cash within 14 days of exercising the OTP, as the rules require. The CPFOA balance covered the balance of the down payment. The loan repayment at 25 years and 2.9% is approximately $6,900 a month. Their combined income is $13,000. TDSR is satisfied with the margin. They are not wealthy in the way they imagined at 28 when they first handed over the keys to the BTO. But they are not in the position of the colleague who tried to buy the condo first, then sell the flat, and discovered the ABSD remission pathway too late to organize the cash. That colleague paid an extra $80,000 in a tax bill that was avoidable, and then spent 14 months waiting for the remission refund to come back. Not because he made a reckless decision, because he made a perfectly reasonable decision without understanding the sequence. 5 layers of rules, none of them secret, all of them on government websites. All of them in effect right now in 2026, governing every property decision being made in Singapore this month. ABSD determines what your citizenship and your ownership count costs you at the point of purchase. SSD determines how long you must hold before you can exit without a penalty that erases the gain. The new EC rules determine whether the vehicle you are planning to use still works the way you think it does. The Plus and Prime classification determines whether the upgrade path that worked for the previous generation is still available to you. And the CPF accrued interest determines what the headline sale price of your flat actually delivers to your bank account versus the number you have been telling yourself for years. Each one of these, misunderstood, produces a six-figure error, not from a reckless decision, from a perfectly reasonable decision made without the right information. Hafiz ran the numbers again. The number was fine. It just was not the number he had been imagining since 2017. The rules did not change to punish people like Hafiz. They changed to protect people like Hafiz from the decisions people like Hafiz were making without knowing what those decisions actually cost. Which number are you imagining right now? And when did you last check if it is still the real one? If this video changed how you see it, like, subscribe, and share it with the person in your life who is about to sign something without running these numbers first.